Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon, lovely people. I am so excited about this interview today because the lovely gentleman next to me and we had a previous conversation about a really interesting topic that touches me because there are so many people who are dealing with it. And I thought it is a really good topic to bring to Unsilenced Grief because we have not really talked much about it yet. So today, I will bring to you Zander Sprague. Thank you so much for being here today. You and I were connected through your lovely publicist, PR agent, I should call her, Angelica. Thank you so much for connecting us. Zander, welcome to Unsilenced Grief, and would you do me the honor to introduce yourself to our audience, please?
All right. Well, thank you so much for having me on. Hello, everyone. My name is Zander Sprague. And one of the things that I do that I'm really passionate about is talking about the sibling survivor experience. Um, and we'll get into my story in a minute, but I've written two books about it. I advocate for sibling survivors. I am a sibling survivor. So I'm excited to share my story and
Yeah.
let's go.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here because this topic, as I said, it is not often enough talked about. And I had one lovely lady come on, and she'll be back soon as well for an episode two. So maybe a couple of people over the course of this is season seven now. So we're talking 7 years of this podcast, and it was literally only touched on a couple of times. So when you talked to me about it, I said, "Yeah, let's do it. Let's come on." And Xander, let's start with your story. Tell us a little bit about your upbringing, siblings, parents. How was it for you growing up, and where did you grow up?
I grew up in just outside of Boston, Massachusetts. I'm one of three. I had an older sister, Lucy, myself, and my younger sister, Cynthia.
Mm.
And grew up, I guess, your pretty normal childhood and stuff like that. Was close to both my siblings most of the time. I mean, like siblings, we sometimes, you disagree, you fight, you get mad, but you always make up and stuff. And my older sister Lucy was a law student at John Marshall Law School in Chicago in 1996. And on December 9th, um, she was murdered in her apartment. It was a maintenance worker in her building. As far as we can tell, the best that we information we have is he let himself in to do maybe some minor theft of, just get some gold chains or something.
Yeah.
And normally Lucy wouldn't have been there. She was down at law school, but it was exam period. She happened to be there. They surprised each other. He ended up strangling her and jumping out her fourth floor window, landing on a second floor roof where he broke his ankle. The police had him right away. There was never any question as to who killed my sister. Not only was it pretty obvious because it was December in Chicago, it was about 15 degrees Fahrenheit, and there
Mm.
was an open window, and he
Yeah.
wasn't hurt that badly. But more importantly, he also had a monogrammed hand towel of my sister's on his person. So again, did not take a lot of detective work to
Yeah.
say who did this. Um,
Yeah.
10 days later, he hung himself in the Cook County prison. So my family did not have to go through what would have probably been a pretty public trial, because at the
Yeah.
time my father was a sitting district court judge in Massachusetts. So, as you can imagine, there was quite a lot of press because judge's daughter gets killed,
Yeah.
um, and the man who killed her um, had spent 8 of the prior 10 years in state prison, had a 4-page rap sheet. It was like ex-convict kills judge's daughter.
Yeah.
It was, and that, there were many things I thought I might deal with in my life, but I can assure you that homicide was not one of them.
Xander, I just want to say my heart goes out to you because to experience something like that, how old were you at the time?
I was 28. My
Yeah.
younger sister was 25, and Lucy was 30. So,
Wow. And you were pretty close, yeah.
yeah, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
talk to her, every week, and sometimes she'd call me for technical support and stuff like that. She
Mm.
was at times a bit of a typhoid Mary with the technology. She would do stuff and then call me up and go, something happened, and then I'm long distance trying to help her like recover a paper or something like that. So sometimes I could, sometimes I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know what you did, but it's bad,
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I often feel because I've heard a lot of stories throughout my life, through the work that I do, through the podcast that I host. And what I feel is when a young person dies, that the focus very often goes to the parents. How do they deal with the
yeah,
loss of their child? And
yeah,
there is a lot of stigma around what is the worst thing that can happen to you. A lot of people would say it is child loss. I have steered away from that stigma, although I was under the same um, belief for a really, really long time until I've spoken to some parents who have lost their children and have done incredible things with it and have seen the purpose throughout it and the direction that they were guided by their children. So I've heard so many different perspectives, but what I feel is often left behind are the siblings. How did that affect the siblings and how did they cope with it? What was the support that they got throughout? Because, as I said, the focus goes to the parents or to the person that died or was murdered. And then what about the siblings? So
yeah,
I'm really glad
absolutely.
that you came on today because I know that you
Yeah,
want to share
yeah,
your
and that
perspective
is
and
that is really one of the big things. Everyone, at the time I was living in Boston, my parents were in Boston. Lots of people knew my parents. I'd run into people and they'd naturally say, "Oh my gosh, how are your parents doing?" But not
mm,
one person asked how I
how
was
are
doing.
you? Yeah.
And here's some startling, statistics and stuff for us. The longest relationship we have in our life is with our
Mm,
siblings.
yeah.
My good friend Heidi Horsley says that when you lose your sibling, you lose your past, your present, and your future. Because we
Wow.
all naturally expect that our siblings are going to be there for major life
A
events,
very, very long time. Yeah.
graduations, marriages,
Mm,
children, jobs,
yeah.
um, all of these things. And in the United States, there's over 1 million new sibling survivors in the US every single year.
Mm,
That's across all age groups. But again, it doesn't matter. I've often said that I think we all get to a certain age where it becomes, and I'll put in air quotes for the people listening, acceptable that we're going to die.
mm,
Maybe you're 80 and you go, yes, now we're in that age frame where this is more likely to be happening. Doesn't make it easier, but you sort of say, okay, this is when this happens, right?
mm,
Um, but I certainly didn't expect at 28 to lose Lucy. And um, I, I think the unacknowledged grief that so many sibling survivors experience is has a profound effect on them. One of the things, I'm a licensed professional clinical counselor, so
mm,
I know mental health. I'm
yeah.
fascinated by it, and um, I can never do any tests to prove causality, but I'm going to say this. I think the unacknowledged grief affects all sibling survivors greatly because nothing is worse than experience something so terrible as losing your sibling and no one says, "Oh my gosh, I'm so
No one
sorry.
notices
How
it or
how are
puts
you
attention.
doing?"
Yeah,
And and it can sometimes play out with, people doing self-medication through alcohol or drugs
yeah,
or doing dangerous things. Sometimes it's
yeah.
just depression or withdrawal from their life. All
Can
of
we
these
talk
are,
about, yeah, sorry,
no, go.
all of these? I didn't mean to cut you off. I think we overlap a tiny little bit with time because I can tell like we're overlapping a little bit. What I wanted to ask you is, there is um, this, as I said before, when one child dies, I can fully understand and wholeheartedly understand that the parents would deal with a whole lot of emotion and heartbreak going through this. And then they have other children. And I feel from what I have witnessed over the years that it often happens that those siblings don't get, as you said, the attention and the help and the support and the how are you dealing with this along the way, and especially amidst the first storm of it all. It's almost like a little bit the forgotten children then. Am I correct in saying that? I don't want to be
Somewhat.
politically incorrect
Maybe
here,
maybe
but
the
it's,
the forgotten survivors,
yeah,
forgotten mourners. I mean, certainly, interestingly, I was an adult when Lucy died, but in the work that I do advocating for sibling survivors, I obviously talk to lots and lots of parents.
yeah,
And so many, like, honestly, almost every single parent who learns that I'm talking about sibling survivors and stuff. And I wrote a book for sibling survivors, but I also
hmm,
wrote a book called Why Don't They Cry, which is something that
hmm,
so many parents have asked me. And
yeah,
it's a book for parents to understand their living child's grief, where I talk about the sibling survivor experience. I talk about the new family, which is I was technically I was the middle child. Now, technically, I'm the oldest child.
yeah,
Depending on your family, there may be expectations for the oldest child.
mm,
I have no idea how to do that job. That wasn't my job.
yeah,
I didn't pay
yeah,
attention. Um, I was keenly aware of how hard this was on my parents. And
mm,
even though there were times that I needed um, either my father or my mother in a time where I was having a tough day, I didn't want to pile on to their grief and go, "Hey,
mm,
help me with my grief."
yeah,
Of course, later, after some time, and I talked to my mom and I'm close to her, and I talked to her about that. She goes, "Well, I'm your mother. Of course I'd be there." And this
mm,
interesting thing happens, and I call it the vicious circle of care, which is
hmm,
um, my mom sees that I'm hurting, so she wants to take care of me, and I see my mom is hurting, and I want to take care of her. And the problem is, everyone's trying to take care of everyone else, but no one's taking care of themselves.
mm.
And in
Oh,
grief,
that's
we
cold.
have we have to we have to unfortunately walk the grief journey on our own. We have to figure out how we're getting through this. It is great that I have close family and great friends, but
Mm,
I alone have to figure out how I'm navigating this, how I'm going to reason what's going on, what has
yeah,
happened, and what am I choosing to do? I think that's a big thing that people miss. In grief, no matter what your grief is, You have a choice every day. You have a choice whether you want to talk about it or not. But if
Mm,
today I choose not to talk about it, doesn't mean I never want to talk about it. It simply
yeah,
means today isn't a day I want to talk about it.
yeah. I'm so with you on that. The choice is something that I talk about in almost every single episode. But my husband was the one who actually brought that concept of choices close to my heart, and that was way before I even entered the world of self-development. I was still in advertising at the time, and he would often take me by both my shoulders and look at me and said, "Babe, two choices. How are we going to respond to this?" And I love it because it's just something he kept doing with me, even when I was a coach. And I would often say to him, "Don't play the coach on me." But I
Yeah.
thought, well, I need it more than anyone because when you are in the outside perspective and often helping others with their perspectives, with their healing, then you need somebody to do that for you as well. So he was my mirror. He was holding that up for me quite high. And I love it because this has really helped me in my own grieving journey because it's not I haven't chosen this. It's how do you choose to respond to it now, every single day, every moment of your life? And do you choose to talk about it? Do you choose to tell people, today I just need a day to myself and not talk about it? But I think it's we have so many stigmas, way too many stigmas in the world of grief, and way too many phrases that people just throw out there and um, put boundaries in place that become hurdles for us to hardly overcome. My condolences. I often mention that. It puts a hurdle there, and puts you in that space and me in that space, and that's a closing door statement. It's not a
Yeah,
let's have a conversation about that.
right. So here's something that I've noticed. First of
Mm,
all, I could say, at least in the United States, because it's the perspective I have, is we deal with death horribly. We frankly treat
yes.
it like it's the most communicable disease in the world. Oh my gosh.
Same here in
You've
Australia, I can promise
experienced,
you
yeah,
that.
no, I know. I'm just, I
Yeah,
don't want to
yeah, yeah,
make
yeah.
some overarching thing that, oh, well, in Australia, they also do it,
Hmm.
but I'm sure it's true. We don't have anything. So people are like, I don't know what to say. I don't want to say the wrong thing. Here's a news flash for everyone. There is no miracle sentence that will make it better for me. And I don't
Yeah.
have a miracle sentence for you, but that's okay. It
Hmm.
doesn't feel enough to say, I'm so sorry for your loss,
Hmm.
but that is what we have to say. There is also an interesting psychological thing that's going on, which is this acknowledgement on both sides that you're both have both experienced a loss. I
Hmm.
before I lost Lucy, I never understood why there were receiving lines at a memorial service or a funeral. I thought, how barbaric could that be? However, when I was on the receiving end of that, I found it to
Hmm.
be strangely very cathartic and
Hmm.
empowering because here were
Wow.
all these people who had known Lucy and
Hmm.
wanted to share this loss with myself and my family.
Yeah.
So again, the psychologist in me goes, huh, why is that happening? What's going on? And
Hmm.
I think it is important. Look,
Yeah.
talk to people. Someone's lost someone, talk to them. If they say,
Yeah.
I don't want to talk about it, that doesn't mean
Oh,
they never want to talk about it.
yeah.
Or
It's
ask,
in the
hey,
moment.
is it just today?
Hmm.
Is it
Yeah.
and let me know when you do want to talk about it because I'm here to listen. That is so
Hmm.
important. People
Yeah.
need to be heard. They need an outlet for their grief.
And it doesn't need advice, right? It just needs somebody to be there and listen. I do want to say something because this is a really, really interesting conversation for me here. I have always talked about how the condolences line, that's what we call it here,
Sure.
was the most horrible experience I've ever had in my entire life. And then I hear you say something polar opposite. And I find that really, really interesting because it just goes to show that people experience and deal with grief so differently. I always say, every grief is just as unique as the person experiencing it. And the reason why I found it one of the worst experience I've ever had was I was 20 when I lost my dad, and I had hundreds of people line up, and everybody said the same sentence to me: my condolences, my condolences, my condolences, sorry for your loss, my condolences. I could not feel, I became so numb standing there, and I literally felt like if one more person said to me, I I'm going to beep this out. No, I can't. It's live. I'm going to punch them in the face. Seriously, that's how I felt. And I'm not a violent person. I just
Totally
felt
get
so
it.
much, coming up in me. I felt emptier and emptier by every time somebody said that to me. And I just didn't want to hear that sentence anymore because it just highlighted that emptiness, the loss, more and more with every single sentence. And I hear you when you say, I needed to talk about it. I wanted people to listen. I wanted people to see me in my grief and hold space for that. I think the holding space part is so important, and nobody knows how to do that. People come in with advice, they want to say something, they want to fix something that can't be fixed. But when I was standing on the other side, on the receiving end of that condolences line, and then I had to make the decision decades later whether I wanted a condolences line for my husband or not. I instantly said no because I did not want my boys to go through that. And I also know that both my boys are introverts. So imagining them at the age of 8 and 10 standing there and having hundreds of people hugging them, I know that would have been detrimental to them, absolutely unbearable. So I actually love that you share that with me, Xander, because I have never encountered somebody sharing that experience from such a different perspective, completely different perspective. So I want to thank you for that because, as I said, it just highlights once more that people deal with grief so differently and they receive things differently out of what people do or say.
Absolutely. And,
Mm.
I talk about Lucy all the time. I've written books about her. I
Mm.
advocate for other sibling survivors. And what I tell parents and other sibling survivors is celebrate the rainbow that was your person's life, not just the dot at the end. Yeah, nothing is going to
Yes,
change.
thank you.
Lucy is dead. I
Yeah,
can't change that. I
yeah.
haven't forgotten it, but you want to know
Mm.
what? Lucy had these 30 beautiful years. There were so many things that she was and what she did and what she loved and stuff. The other thing is, let us not canonize the dead, okay? I love
Mm.
Lucy very much, but there were days where she was not very nice to me.
Mm.
And that's part of any relationship, right? And we
Yeah.
all have faults. If there are parents listening and you've lost a child, I'm so sorry, but you have other living children. Please do not say your brother or your sister wouldn't do that. You want to know what? I
Mm.
can't compete against a dead person. Lucy
Hmm.
can never make another mistake.
Yeah. Wow.
One of the things I loved about being the middle child is I got to stand behind Lucy and watch her make some monumental mistakes and go, well, that's definitely not the way to do that one. I won't
Yeah.
handle it that way if that comes up. Now all of a sudden I'm the one who's making the mistakes, and my younger sister's behind me going, well, there were two, but now there's one, and I'm not going to do it that way.
Mm.
So I try and have some humor around this, but I also do believe a lot of the work that my family does in Lucy's memory is to celebrate her. And it honestly, it
Yeah.
feels so much better to
I love
celebrate
that.
Lucy's life than just go, oh, yeah, my sister died. Oh,
Yeah.
and be all Eeyore about it. Look, I have my days where I'm really sad. I don't want people to think
Yeah.
I'm not, but I've
Yeah.
worked hard and look, I'm working my way through this. Another thing, if we're going to talk about bugaboos, people go, Oh, it's been 29 years since Lucy,
Mm,
coming up on 30 years in December, that
yeah.
Lucy was murdered. When people come up and go, "Oh, you're not over losing your sister?" No, I will never get over losing Lucy. I'm
Mm,
working my way through it, and some days better than others. But I will not get. Will you get over losing your dad?
mm.
Of course not.
I
You're
I
working
see it
your way
very
through it.
differently. I love that we have this conversation because we seem to have very different perspectives on things, and I love that because that's the most important part in this podcast, that you hear different stories and you can talk about these things. So I don't like that term at all, this get over it, or move on, or that to me is not language that I would ever use in grief. I look at grief like a visitor and not like a permanent resident. That's the
Yeah,
difference, you know? So people often talk about they'll always stay with you, you'll always be, and you'll never get over it, and all these things. And I'm like, there's nothing to get over or move forward or not. Like, Rob was such a huge part of my life, and so was my dad, obviously. I both had them for a not very long time. I had my dad for 20 years, I had Rob for 13 years. And that to me left such a phenomenal imprint in my life. It made me who I am today. They both shaped, those two men shaped so much of who I am and what I do today. But I refuse to see grief as a constant companion or as a permanent resident in my life. She's a visitor. She
absolutely.
comes and goes. And when she comes and I have time, I'll sit with her. If not, sometimes I have to say, not now. Not now. It's one of my favorite things. But then there are times where I know it is time to sit with her and to go deep within and shed those tears and heal those wounds and heal more layers. There are layers to every story. And to me, as you said, with the rainbow and the dot at the end, that's how I look at grief. Grief to me is the dot at the end, not the ongoing after that will last forever. It will be resurfacing because there was an end to that rainbow. So it will be resurfacing and there will be memories and there will be triggers. And I'm okay with that. But I refuse to see that as a black line thereafter that is always there. I don't look at
Abs
it that way.
right. Absolutely.
Mm,
I honestly, I couldn't agree more, which is
mm,
it is part of my life, but it is not all of who I am. I
yeah.
choose to define my loss, not have it define me. And I
Yes.
think
Thank
that's
you.
really important. We
Hmm.
have a choice. And look, I will grant you
Yeah.
sometimes the choices are bad and worse, not trying to be all
I
sunshine
agree.
and rainbows.
Yeah.
However, there is so much power in saying, today I choose to do this. There's so many
Mm.
things that we choose every day. Am I, what do I
I
want
want
to
to
have
ask
for
you a
tomorrow?
question.
Absolutely.
I love it. Why don't they cry?
Why don't they cry? Well, they don't cry because if we're over 15, we are very aware of what the grief that our parents are experiencing, and we don't want to pile on to that crap sandwich.
Mm.
Pardon my language, but that's what it is. And
Hmm.
um, I didn't want to, as I said, I didn't want to, in seeing my parents' grief, which, by the way, was and is so hard
Mm.
to watch. I want so much to take the pain that my parents felt and feel from them. The same way
Mm.
that as a parent, when my children are hurting, I want to take their pain away. I don't want for them to experience unpleasantness, sadness, whatever.
Yeah.
However, we all have to. And I think we don't cry in front of our parents because we don't want to burden them. Part of the book
Mm.
says, talk to your kids, share,
Mm.
share what's going on. Everyone, oh, I want to protect them. You want to know what? As a family, we're all there to support each other, right?
Mm.
Sometimes I need to lean on my mom more. Sometimes she needs to lean on me. Sometimes my sister needs to lean on me. That's fair. That's
Yeah.
all part of being a family. It's part of any relationship. Um, if you're married or dating someone, there are days that you need your partner more than, and other days they need
Mm.
you. And that's all part, and there's no problem. There's no like, oh, I can't do that. Um,
Yeah.
I think talking talking about what's going on. I'm lucky. I have really good relationship with my parents. My dad shared something about 6 months after Lucy died. And he's like, as your dad, what I want to do is lock you and your sister in the house so nothing bad can happen to
Oh,
you.
yeah.
However, I know that you're both adults out in the world living your life, and I can't do that. But I so appreciated that my father felt comfortable enough to share with me that as a dad, what he wanted to
Yeah.
do is protect us. He didn't want anything bad to
Yeah.
happen. And absolutely understandable. Your
I can
child
relate
gets
to that so
murdered,
much.
you're
Yeah.
like, everyone stay in the house so nothing bad can
Yeah.
happen. I can't go
That's
through
really,
this.
yeah. Because that's what a lot of people don't talk about, the fears that come thereafter. People talk about the grief, the death, all of that when you have experienced it. As we said before, people not having gone through an experience like that feel rather uncomfortable talking about death and dying and grief. It feels like a contagious disease. Let's just not talk about it.
It really
It's
does.
really, yeah, and yet it is
If I
actually
don't talk
such a
about it, I
beautiful.
won't catch it.
Exactly,
And
yeah. I'm not going to die, and I'm like, okay. So what my biggest fear was after Rob died, my husband, was that something could happen to either of my sons. It was such a huge fear, and I went through therapy at two or three different times after Rob died to help me through various things that I needed to deal with, where I needed support because I was the one. Then all of a sudden, I was the sole income earner, sole provider, sole protector, sole parent, sole everything, and I needed support for myself. I learned that the very hard way very quickly. And I did go and get that, which was really phenomenal. And then when I went through phases where it became harder, I went back for more support. And I feel I'm very aware of what I'm doing and it's very needed. But the one fear, and I even said that to my psychologist when I had my final session, I said, I need a break from this right now. But the one fear that I still couldn't shake was, what if something was to happen to one of my boys? And then in my head, I was so freaked out about it that I thought, if I don't stop thinking about it, I'm going to attract it. The whole manifestation thing. I'm like, Marie, you need to
yeah,
stop doing this. So I really had to work on my nervous system, my, calming myself down, watching my thoughts, redirecting my thoughts to something positive. What can I do? Where am I in charge, and focus on that, what I can do. And then it stabilizes you. But I think we don't talk enough about what actually happens, the fears that we have, the thoughts that we have. And I think they are a huge part of our healing journey. So, in the work that I do, I always encourage people to talk about it. And I'm fairly certain in the work that you do, that's exact the work that you do, to keep people in that space, to create a safe space where people can talk about it. So, I know we've only got a few minutes left, but I do want to redirect our conversation to the work that you do. This is the perfect segue. Tell us a little bit about how can you help people when people are listening to this podcast right now and they have experienced the loss of a sibling, they're a survivor of a sibling loss. How can they
sure.
contact you and how do you help them?
Okay. So if you go to epicbegins.com, that is the website that will get you to all things Zander Sprague.
Hmm.
My books are available on Amazon.
Hmm.
And but the work that I do is what's really important. I'm a great organization. I want people to know about it. It's for parents
Hmm.
and siblings. Uh, if families lost a child, it's called the Compassionate Friends,
Hmm.
compassionatefriends.org. Awesome organization. I sit on the board as a sibling representative. Um, their motto is "You need not walk alone," and that is so
Mhm.
true. You were talking
I
about
love
needing
that.
help. Help is
Yeah.
there, and it's a
Yeah.
peer-to-peer support group. Um, the siblings are awesome. We love getting together. We have Zoom meetings. We There's a national conference coming up in July in Baltimore, Maryland. I
Mhm.
think in Australia there is some Compassionate Friends chapters. Um,
Mhm.
but
I'm fairly
you know,
certain because it sounds very familiar, so I should know
a-
this, but I will look it up.
and and it's such a great organization to help families who've experienced the loss of a child. And I can
Mhm.
really only speak for the sibling side, but I can say I am so happy I found them. I was
Mhm.
19 years into my journey before I found them, and part of me is sort of sad and bummed that I didn't find them before because I certainly could have used them in the first 19 years. Um,
Mhm.
but
Yeah.
now that I found them, it's great. There's so much support. It's great to be able to talk to people who've experienced the same thing as you have, to be able
Yeah.
to say, oh, my parents are insisting that I text every time I leave my apartment, and I have to text them or call them when I get to the supermarket or whatever. And if I
Mhm.
don't, my mom or dad is
Yeah.
freaking out, calling the police, and like,
Yeah.
and but to be able to have that conversation with people who get it is so
Mm.
important. Um,
Yeah, absolutely.
to be
Because
able to
it's
just
that
say my
whole
parents
to
and go,
know you're
yeah,
not alone in
then you
this.
get to talk
Yeah.
about it versus your well-meaning friend who you have to take 15 minutes to set up the whole thing to then get to
Yeah.
talk about it for someone who just doesn't understand.
Yeah. I love what you offer here, and I love the conversation that you have started. And I certainly hope that this is not the last conversation we have about sibling loss, survivor of sibling loss. It's just a topic that is so on the sidelines, so forgotten. So I'm really, really glad that you came here to put a bit of attention on this topic. And Sylvia Wolfer, who I had here before, she will be very happy to hear that conversation as well. So there are some people out there who do some phenomenal work, and I love highlighting them every single week here on Unsilence Grief. So, Sander, thank you so much for being here. For everybody who is watching this and feels called to reach out, I will be putting the show notes in. I can't ever do it when we go live, unfortunately, but I always come back straight after the show, and we'll be putting in all the links, how you can reach out to Xander, how you can get hold of his books, and how you can potentially work with him or maybe invite him to speak at your organization. So there is a lot of help out there. And if you like what you hear, please come back or subscribe to our channel and Silence Brief for weekly updates. Xander, any final words that you would like to wrap us up with? If there's one thing that you would like people to take away from the conversation, what would that be?
I'm just going to repeat it. You need not walk alone. It may feel lonely to be a sibling survivor, but know that there are others out. There are so many of us out here,
Mm.
and I, for one, am here to help you with your journey.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you so much for being here. This is Xander and Marie signing off. Bye for now.